All right, everyone, to start our drawing of our eye, I want you to grab an H pencil. H stands for hard. That refers to the graphite that's inside. Remember, the hard graphite is graphite mixed with clay. It makes for a harder graphite and a lighter line. I'm going to write my first name, last initial, small and in the corner of my paper, and then flip my paper over. I want to make sure that my paper is horizontal because we are going to start our drawing of an eye. Now, in our drawing of an eye, we're going to start by using the template. And one thing I do want to say about the template is it's got this little funky part that sticks out a smidge. This is for the tear duct. It's going to be pointing down. And so before I go to trace this onto my paper, I want to make sure that it's in the middle. Okay. And I am going to trace this very lightly. Okay, so I'm using a lighter graphite. It's going to be lighter automatically. But I'm going to take a moment and just keep those lines light. Later on in our process, I'm going to go over some of the lines in a darker graphite, probably one of the B pencils, but I just want to get my preliminary lines correct. All right, so this is what I have on my paper so far. At this point in time, I'm going to just identify what the middle of my space is. This kind of looks like the middle. I'm going to put a small dot. And then I am going to, with my circle shape tracer, okay, this is my circle shape tracer here. I'm actually going to use the largest circle here. And what I'm going to do is line up that circle so that the dot is smack dab in the center. And then I'm just going to trace on either side. Okay, so this side and this side of the circle. I don't necessarily want to trace the top and the bottom, although in this case I might need to trace the top a little bit, because the eyelid is actually going to cover part of the top and the bottom of your eye. Okay, so when your eye is just looking forward, your eyelids kind of cover over your eye, so part of it is not seen because it's covered by the eyelid. All right, at this point in time, I'm going to use the smallest circle here, and again, I'm going to line it up with that center dot, and I'm going to trace it, and this represents my pupil. Okay, just very lightly with my pencil, I'm going to fill it in. Again, I'm going to come back with a dark pencil later. I just don't want to create indentations in my paper. All right, we'll fill that in later. And that is for my pupil. Okay, so that's the black part of your eye that lets the light in. Now, at this point in time, what we're going to do is create the window highlight. We're going to create the eyelid line, some of the eyelashes, and then also a little bit of the eyebrow itself. And I'm just going to base the window highlight. The window highlight is the highlight on the iris. So this is the iris part of the eye. And what you're going to do is sketch out a shape that looks kind of like this. It's almost kind of a C shape. Almost, but not quite. Kind of like this. In the video, this top part is a little bit different. You can modify it then. And this will remain pure white as my window highlight. Okay. Also, while I'm in the center part, I'm going to create a pattern for the iris. So the iris, think of it as sort of a wagon wheel where this is the center of it and all of the spokes of the wagon wheel come out from the center. We're going to create this pattern that is in the iris part of the eye. Okay, and if you have a lighter color eye, you're going to see more of this pattern. So if you have like a light blue eye or a gray or green or maybe even hazel, you're going to see this pattern that is part of this wagon wheel. Okay, so all of these lines that I'm kind of sketching out are pointing in the direction of that center point. Okay, so something that looks like this. I'm also going to do the same thing from the middle, except I'm pointing these outward. And some of that texture, or that pattern, I guess I should say, from the iris of the eye, again, we'll go over this with a darker pencil later on, and that'll help you kind of fill in that general area. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is create the eyelid, so the top part of the eyelid. If I were to measure from the center of my pupil to the top of my iris, my eyelid would start up here, okay, or actually I guess I would say it would crease right up here. So at this point I'm going to create a line that runs almost parallel in terms of the curve. It goes off of the paper, okay, because it's about this height. Goes off the paper, comes back on the paper, okay, kind of like so. And that's my eyelid line, all right. At this point in time, I can create a little bit of an eyebrow. Okay, so an eyebrow would actually come above that. Now we're not going to see too much of the eyebrow here, because most of our eyelid is actually cut off by the paper, but the eyelid is basically the hairy rainbow of the face. So you have, again, another line that mimics this curve here for the eyelid. We're only going to see a little bit of the eyebrow here and a little bit of it over here, and then we're done. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to create these little tiny eyelashes. And the way that the eyelashes work is, because this is the right eye, they're going to curve to the right. Now, both guys and girls have eyelashes. One thing to be aware of is that when you draw these, okay, you can make them short or you can make them longer. You want to make them curve sort of ever so slightly to the right. Okay, so right now I'm just drawing these as lines that start kind of right at the eyelid here, curve outward ever so slightly to the right, ending at that corner. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to, rather than leave them as lines, I'm going to create these little tiny shapes. So I'm going to add another line on the other side and turn them into sort of these curved triangles. So see how I'm adding another line? Okay, it's like they come to a point at the top and then create sort of a triangle shape at the bottom, ending right at your eyelid line. We're actually going to fill this in with a darker graphite a little bit later on. Also notice how all of my eyelashes, again, are curving ever so slightly to the right. All right, okay. Now, last but not least, I'm gonna create a really tiny, little tiny line that runs parallel and mimics that curve, the bottom part of the eye here. This is gonna be the bottom eyelid line. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the lashes, but I'm going to curve them down to the right. Now, the bottom eyelashes are not nearly as long as the top, so I'm going to make them these little tiny things that come out from that line. So they kind of go from that bottom lid line and curve down ever so slightly. Okay, and I'm going to turn them into very small triangles, just like I did the top, except this time they're upside down. Now, once you've done this part, you essentially are ready to trace over your drawing with some sort of B pencil. I would recommend one of the B's that's a little bit less smeary. Oh, I forgot to draw the tear duct. Kind of like that. There we go. Okay. a little bit less smeary. So an HB pencil, which is your regular number 2 pencil, would work well. A 2B would also work well. And what we're going to do is trace over all of the lines we have drawn. Okay. From there, we're going to introduce softer graphite to create some of the value within our drawing.